What's going on, guys? I appreciate you tuning in to today's episode. Today we're back on the hunt at Collector Con. I know it feels like just a couple of weeks ago I was at Collector Con. Just 2 videos ago was my Collector Con Penrith toy hunt vlog. That was the Penrith location. As you might be able to see behind me, this is the Minto location, the Minto Indoor Sports Centre. New location, hopefully some new sellers and hopefully some cool new stuff to see. And I'm excited to get in there and see what we can find. Now, it's a pretty packed run home to Christmas. We've got a toy hunt up on the Central Coast next weekend, which I'm hoping you guys will see in the next video. Just a couple of weeks after that, we're back at the big one, back at Penrith Collector Con, and then obviously Christmas is coming up. So pretty heavy run home to the year. So today I'm on the hunt for bargains. Hopefully I can find some cheap and cheerful additions to the collection. That's the plan. Let's see if we can stick to it, and let's rip into it right now. Now, as always, I had the early bird entry. It's non-negotiable at this point in time. We're in there bright and early, but unlike Collector Con Penrith a few weeks back where I spent the bulk of that early bird hour zeroing in on just 2 or 3 stalls, this time around we made a point of whizzing around and at least having a quick look at both halls before the general admission came in. Now, once I had a quick look around, my first proper stop of the day was Freaky Deaky Toys, a stall that we looked at Collector Con Penrith a couple of videos back, and just like a couple of videos back, Deak from Freaky Deaky Toys had a great selection of modern stuff. I didn't really show that this time around because we captured it, like I said, 2 videos ago. But I was really stoked to see that this time around, Deak brought a tub of mixed vintage figures, which was awesome, and also some mini Boglins, which are always really cool to see. Now, what's interesting is, at Penrith a few weeks back, Deak had a tub of mini Boglins, which from a distance I mistook for Monster in My Pocket figures, another minifigures line that I'm collecting, I loved as a kid, and I'm trying to complete that childhood collection that I had back in the early 90s. And I was chatting with Deak at Penrith, and I mentioned that the one original Monster in My Pocket figure that I'm chasing to complete my collection is Wendigo. Now, shortly after Collector Con Penrith, Deak hit us up on Messenger and mentioned that he did in fact have a spare Wendigo figure. And not only did he have one, he was going to hook it up for nothing. And Deak brought that figure with him today, and I'm super appreciative. The elusive Wendigo! Thanks so much, mate. That is friggin' awesome.
You're welcome, mate. Happy to help you.
I love it. Good man. Thank you. And here we have it, guys. The neon green Wendigo figure, number 24 in the original line of 48 Monster in My Pocket minifigures that I collected back in the early 90s. And it's one of the few surviving collections from my childhood that I have still to this day. And in the last few years, I've been chipping away and trying to complete the Monster in My Pocket collection. And now I have a complete run of the first 48, all in different colors. I'm sick enough to try to complete this line, but I'm not sick enough to try to complete it in specific colors or anything like that. So it's a mixed bag, and I'm just blown away. So a big thanks once again to Deak. And yeah, now that I've got the complete Monster in My Pocket first run, I'm going to have to get these guys on display in a really nice way. I would love to get my hands on the original Monster Mountain display case. I know Deak has one of those. They are extremely difficult to find, very subject to condition issues, but so I will keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, I want to get a nice wall-mounted display case and have these all lit up on the wall, and I can't wait to do that. And when I do, or prior to doing that, we'll do a nice little video dedicated to Monster in My Pocket, because I'd love to talk about the line in more detail, the history, childhood memories, and all that sort of stuff. So a big shout out once again to Deak for hooking it up with the Monster in My Pocket Wendigo. And then once I had the Wendigo monster in my pocket, I had to take the chance to have a bit of a rummage through Deak's selection of vintage action figures, and I saw a figure there that I've been chasing for quite a while, and it's this Skeleton Warriors Grimskull figure. Now, I've been trying to get my hands on this guy complete. I've been holding out to find a complete version, and it just ain't working for me. Like any good Playmates action figure line, Skeleton Warriors came with tons of accessories, including spring-loaded projectiles, so I thought, you know what, let's save myself the trouble and pick it up complete. Like I said, I'm just not finding it. So I saw Deak had this Grimskull figure incomplete, but in nice condition at the right price, so I've scooped it up. He comes with his cape accessory, he's got his little canine companion, little skeleton doggo accessory, so I thought, you know what, we'll pick him up and I'll try to keep my eye out for those accessories and chip away. But for now, really happy to add another Skeleton Warriors figure to the shelf. Nice little Grimskull for the Skeleton Warriors collection, 35 bucks. That is coming home with me. So the next stall that I stopped at had a great selection of mixed vintage toys, but what stopped us in our tracks was a carded Mattel Extreme Dinosaurs T-Bone figure, something that's a fairly rare sight in itself. I don't recall the last time I saw a carded or sealed Extreme Dinosaurs toy. It's just not the kind of thing you see too commonly here in Australia, at least. But what really stopped us in our tracks was the fact that it was branded as Dangerous Dinosaurs instead of Extreme Dinosaurs. Very similar logo, similar card art, still had the Mattel logo, same character names. It was a T-Bone figure. The card back looked like any other Extreme Dinosaurs card back. But yeah, I've never seen that Dangerous Dinosaurs branding before. It's not something I'm familiar with. The seller believed that it was possibly a region-specific release. If anyone watching this is familiar with Dangerous Dinos, definitely let us know in the comments, because it was really cool to see.
Yeah, wicked.
Yeah. I've never seen one boxed before.
No, you don't even see Extreme Dinosaurs boxed anymore.
But the seller also had a great selection of loose toys, lots of McDonald's toys of different eras and styles. Now, one thing that jumped out to me was a pair of Mighty Max McDonald's toys. It's something we've talked about on the channel before. During my most recent Mighty Max review video, we looked at the McDonald's Yeti toy, and I was stoked to see that the seller had the other one to complete that pair of Mighty Max McDonald's toys, and it's the Ice Monster. And it's a really cool little playset. Love the translucent blue. I mean, anything translucent is gonna jump out at me. When you open it up, there's not an awful lot going on. Once again, just like that Yeti, you've got the Max figure kind of fixed to the base of the playset, where you can kind of move it around using a little dial at the bottom of the playset underneath. I mean, displays nicely, pretty cool. You know, when you think about all the creativity and ingenuity that went into the Mighty Max line, it's kind of absent from these Macca's premiums, but hey, it is what it is. It's a, you know, it's a free McDonald's toy with your Happy Meal, so you can't complain too much. But I was stoked to see this because now I've got the pair in my collection, and yeah, happy days. And speaking of Mighty Max, the same seller also had a beautiful carded Mighty Max horror headpiece. And yeah, it was a super straight card. I've mentioned before on the channel that in my opinion, Mighty Max card art is some of the coolest card art, like original pencil or paint artwork, comic backstories on the card back. You just can't beat it. I had a good look at it. It was very reasonably priced, but I'm going down the rabbit hole as far as collecting all of these Mighty Max playsets loose, and to have one carded in the collection, it's nice to have that representation, but I don't know, it's not something that's critical to the collection. So I admired it, and the seller was kind enough to let me have a close look at it, let me get some shots of it for you guys, and it was really cool. So very, very cool to see. up, we stopped at Owen Stall. Owen from Here for Toys. I mentioned him in detail in the last Collector Con video. If you saw that last one, you'll know Owen brings the goods when it comes to vintage TMNT and also other lines like Mighty Max. And just like last time, Owen had a killer selection of vintage TMNT. Lots of beautiful carded stuff, lots of loose stuff as well. Now, rather than show you guys all the same stuff that we looked at Penrith, I tried to pick out some of the stuff that you wouldn't have seen. Owen had a beautiful mint on card, Mikey as the Invisible Man, a piece that we spoke about in the last Mutagens live stream with the boys Dean, Dan and Enzo. And it's just it's a beautiful piece, man. I love Universal Monsters, I love TMNT. Another piece that's even rarer and just as killer is the Undercover Donnie in trench coat, dual language card with the Playmates logo and the Ideal Toys logo. And it was really cool to have like a cool, up close, hands-on look at that. And Owen's always cool like that, letting us have a close look at some of this stuff. And also lots of random TMNT merch and other oddities, which Owen also brings. And again, lots of great Mighty Max stuff. I was eyeing off a couple of different TMNT figures in the loose complete figures tubs. There was a skateboarding Mikey figure, there was a movie foot soldier figure that I was kind of eyeing off, but what I ultimately settled on for my purchase from Owen Stall was something I mentioned in the last video actually, and that's this complete bonehead figure from Toxic Crusaders. We're getting away from Turtles and we're talking about Toxic Crusaders, and this is the last figure that I need to complete the wave of figures. He does have the thing that's a bugbear for me in trying to find a bonehead, and that is the kind of hazard sign decal on the waistband. You often see them missing this decal. That's the first thing I look at when I pick up these figures. So I was stoked to see that he has that little decal. He's got all 4 of his weapons, both of his guns, his knife, and also this wicked gas mask accessory, and the strap on the gas mask is nicely intact. Love all the glow in the dark accessories, and this thing is just beautiful. So now, through spending probably 40 minutes or less at Collector Con so far, I've completed the Monster in My Pocket collection, and we can now say that the Toxic Crusaders collection is also complete, at least as it relates to the figures. I'm not even getting into the vehicles yet, we'll get to them later, but we've got all the figures, most of which are complete. And yeah, I'm really happy to have Bonehead in the collection. He's got a spot on the shelf ready for him, and not only did he come complete with all of his accessories, he also came with a really nice straight unpunched card back, which is really cool as well. And yeah, I don't have any Toxic Crusaders card backs in my collection, so it's really cool to have one. Now, the interesting thing about Toxic Crusaders card backs is the front of the card all utilize the same artwork. You've got the big image of Toxie here, which is awesome, the beautiful bright kind of day glow colors. But unlike other toy lines where the card art is varied for the different characters, where you have a feature image, some dynamic artwork of that character, all the Toxic Crusaders card backs just feature Toxie. So to have one in the collection to represent them, I think is really cool. But the backside of this card is where all the action is. You've got an awesome little backstory, wicked artwork. Obviously, you've got your cross sell with all your other figures, which if I was going back to when I was 8 years old, I'll be ticking all these off. And you've got your file card. And yeah, this is just awesome. So big shouts to Owen for hooking it up with a really nice deal on this complete Bonehead. And we've got the figure collection complete. Cheers. Now, just like last time, Owen was cool enough to bring out the tubs of TMNT accessories. But unlike last time, I came organized, I had a list, and I was stoked that I was able to tick off a few accessories that I've been chasing down for some incomplete TMNT figures in my collection. First up, and the one I'm probably most happy with, is this wrench accessory for the mutant worm figure. I think this is called the Porcupounder. I could be wrong, but really happy to have Worm's wrench or Porcupounder accessory. So now he's going to display all the better. And I also picked up a couple of movie stars accessories. I've got an ooze canister, and I've got like a trash can lid shield for my movie stars Donnie. So he is almost complete. Just need a couple of stars for Donnie and he's complete. So I was stoked to walk away, not only with the complete Bonehead, but with a few accessories to complete a couple of my vintage TMNT figures. man. He's missing his little mace weapon, unfortunately. 50. Dark side. How much is these? 75 or 25? I'm assuming 75 with that cape. And then we've got Firestorm.
20 bucks for that,
Firestorm for 80. It's more than I want to pay for Firestorm, that's for sure. Next up, we stopped at the table of a regular seller, a couple that always stall out at Collector Con and always have a great selection of mixed loose vintage action figures, and they had some really cool random stuff today. Dungeons and Dragons, socket poppers, Pirates of Dark Water, but one thing that I was stoked to pick up was a Burger King Universal Monsters Dracula figure from 1997, one of the 4 Universal Monsters figures that we took a close look at in my very most recent video that you guys may have seen. And in that video I spoke about how I had to get these from the US because I never find them here. And there you go. A week later, I proved myself wrong by reaching into a random tub at Collector Con and pulling one out. So that was really fun to see. Now I've already got a nice clean, baggy, fresh Dracula in the collection, so I didn't pick up that figure. But speaking of Universal Monsters, one thing that I couldn't resist from this table was this book right here. We've got the Monsters Who's Who, essentially an A to Z of monsters from myth, legend, and obviously the big screen. We've got the iconic Universal Monsters pictured here on the front. We've got iconic kaiju monsters in Godzilla and King Kong, and this thing is just awesome. This book dates back to the 70s, it's dated 1974, and like it suggests, A to Z of monsters, and it just goes through it all. Everything from the monsters of the Universal Studios films to the British Hammer horror films, which I also love, like I said, to the Japanese kaiju monsters. And beautiful artwork, and I just thought, you know what, for a tenner this has got to go onto my bookcase, and I was really happy to pick it up. So Universal Monsters was definitely a reoccurring theme of today's toy hunt, because our next stop was Minikins Collectables, a seller I've mentioned several times on the channel before. Great blokes that always have a great selection. And when it comes to Minikins Collectables, my attention is usually on the bagged up loose vintage figures where I've had some great finds before, but my attention was drawn to the back of their store where they had some true holy grail Universal Monsters pieces that I only mentioned in that most recent video I put out, where I spoke about some of the original 1970s Universal Monsters toys, and the guys were cool enough to let me behind the table to have an up-close look, which was incredible. That is unbelievable. All 4 boxed Mego Mad Monsters. And then over here, something really cool that I've never even heard of. I wasn't even familiar with this vintage Lincoln International Monster. Frankenstein. Apparently, from what I've been told, this is made in New Zealand. So this is really cool. And then if that wasn't enough awesome vintage Universal Monsters action, then we've got some of the original Aurora model kits. I am absolutely blown away by these. This is unbelievable. Frankenstein. And then we've got Dr. Jekyll as Mr. Hyde over here, Aurora model kit. And again, the box art is just unbelievable. And then if that's not cool enough, we've got a boxed vintage Dino Riders Dino. And then we've got some beautiful carded vintage Motu action. But guys, I'm just blown away by this Universal Monsters stuff. Unbelievable. Although, when I spoke about them in the most recent video, I spoke about how the fact that Mego didn't have the license, so they weren't able to truly capture how those characters looked in the film, and they were a bit kind of oddball in terms of their representations. Seeing them sealed in the box like that, and the complete set, they were selling them as a set. Beautifully crisp boxes, beautifully bright coloured box art. It sounds weird, but I was almost starstruck to see them. And as blown away as I was by the carded TMNT stuff that Owen had on his table, Mikey's The Invisible Man was something I stared at for probably a solid 5 minutes today. These Mego Mad Monsters were definitely my favourite thing that I saw today, and you know, I've never spent 4 figures for a toy or for a set of toys before, but man, I was almost reaching for my credit card seeing those. They are just beautiful. Look, it's a price point that I just can't justify at this point in my life, but I tell you what, I did give it a good think. So yeah, very, very cool to see not only the Mego Mad Monsters, the Lincoln Universal Monsters toys, which were really cool to see because I'd never heard of the Lincoln International Monsters toys, so it was cool to see them up close for the first time. And also those beautiful Aurora model kits, which once again have killer art and from what I understand are pretty much like the original Universal Monsters toys before we started to get them in action figure form in the 70s. So yeah, just incredible. And once again, a big shout out to Minikins Collectibles. So next up, while we're still at Minikins, we go from the top of the mountain, the top dollar vintage action figures to a fun little cheapie, but something I had to pick up. I don't have any ET representation in the collection. I love the ET film. It's one that gets a run at least every year in this house, and I don't have any ET in the collection, like I said, so I had to scoop this guy up. I don't know anything about this toy. I can't spot any markings, but we've got a fun little probably 4-inch ET figure with the little play feature with his head and neck there, and also the little speak and spell accessory, which I thought was awesome. So I mean, the boys did me this for a tenner, so after drooling all over those, you know, $1,000 Mego Mad Monsters, I had to pick up a $10 ET figure. So anyway, it is what it is. It all brings me joy, and I was happy to add ET to the collection. So interestingly, while only a few weeks separated the last Collector Con Penrith to today's show at Minto, there was still plenty of new things that I hadn't seen at Penrith. Plenty, including a few things that I was giving serious consideration of picking up. There was a table there that had a beautiful example of the TMNT 5th anniversary gold chrome Leonardo figure in box. Beautiful condition.
It's definitely.
Look how beautiful it is up close though, like. They did a really nice job.
I think that's how you got to buy him, but you got to buy him.
Yeah, for sure.
It's one of those ones. It's a showpiece.
The price was a bit on the upper side for me, probably more than reasonable, but it's not a cheap figure. So it was really, really cool to see that and get an up close look at that 5th anniversary Leo figure. There was another regular seller there that had a really big variety of vintage toys. Some of the more common stuff that you see, but some of the more obscure stuff, and not necessarily expensive, but just stuff that I've never seen before in my toy hunting, including a boxed Things game of skill piece from the 80s in the box with a nice straight box from 1986. And he also had a set of puzzles, unsolved mysteries puzzles going back to the 70s. So the Bermuda Triangle, the Abominable Snowman, the Loch Ness Monster, all things that really captured my attention and imagination as a kid. And those sorts of things I still love to this day with my Usborne Monsters books and Unsolved Mysteries and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, those puzzles were $10 a piece. They had the instructions inside. And again, it's just... It's these obscure things that I love seeing and picking up and having a close look at, and sometimes purchasing at Collector Con, but they do kind of distract me from the focus of my collecting in terms of these action figure lines that you see behind me, and space is at a premium. So ultimately I didn't pick up either of those 70s or 80s pieces, but really, really cool to see them up close in nice, beautiful, vibrant boxes. And as always, guys, what makes Collector Con so great for me is also just the social element of it. And it was a great turnout, as always, today. I had really great interactions with all the sellers and fellow collectors. I met a new friend of the channel, Brad, at Owen's table, which was really cool. I've had some interactions with Brad on Instagram before, so it was really cool to meet Brad. And also just familiar faces. Our mate Adam, who's a friend of the channel, I had a good chat with him, as I always do. Adam's great for a chat, and he was cool enough to show us some of the stuff he picked up.
There's a silver top, and there's a green top.
So what's
not hard to come by, but
Which one's that? The silver mohawk? Yeah.
And you get a green mohawk.
Okay, I didn't know the difference, but I just remember this was like something I always hunted as a kid and never saw in stores.
So yeah, just really fun social interactions today. And as we bring the video home, I've got to share with you guys a couple of very generous gifts from friends, and it just never ceases to blow me away. We've got my friends Dan and Monique, who hooked me up with this incredible vintage TMNT backpack. How about this? Some kid definitely proudly rocked this to school, and I'm stoked to have it in my collection. I've got to be honest with you, I kind of wish that it was just a little bit bigger so I could throw it on my back and toy hunt with this thing, but unfortunately it is way too small for that. So we'll find a nice spot to display this in the collection room, and I might have to just go through all these pockets just to make sure there's not any, I don't know, some stray trading cards or TMNT action figure weapons. You never know what you might find in there, so I'll have a bit of a dig through there. But yeah, big shout out to Dan and Monique. Totally unnecessary, but you know, those guys are just absolute champions, so they do things like this, so big shout out to those guys. Then we've got my mate Dean, who I'm convinced is incapable of coming to a Collector Con without bringing me something, and today he's hooked it up with the awesome set of, well, I thought this was a wax pack of Terminator 2 trading cards, but it's actually stickers. We've got a pack of 5 stickers here by Tops in the wax pack paper, and I'm kind of tempted to bust these open and see what we got, but for now we'll keep it sealed, and this will sit nicely on the Terminator 2 shelf where I've got all my Kenner figures and my Terminator VHS, so that's awesome. And then I don't even know where to start with this last one, guys. I've got a good mate, a good friend of the channel, who is a top bloke who prefers to remain anonymous. I want to give credit where it's due and shout this bloke out, but I respect the fact that he doesn't want me to do that. But he's gone and hooked it up with some incredible pieces. First, we've got the awesome Foot Clan hat, which I'm definitely going to run during the next Mutagens live stream. So that's awesome. Expect to see this in my videos and in my live stream. So that's awesome. We've got the Foot Clan hat with the pizza inner, which is just wicked. And then some incredible vintage pieces, which are really quite amazing. First up, we've got a little cassette here, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Intergalactic Wrestling. Now this bloke knows me, and he knows that I'm a turtle guy and I'm a wrestling guy, so when he saw this, he thought I would appreciate it, and I absolutely do. I've got another TMNT cassette on the shelf, so this will go right next to it, so a big shout out for that. Then we have the Toxic Crusaders card game, and I've never really had an up-close look at this, so I'm gonna have fun going through this, and yeah, seeing what it's all about. But just the thing that I'm obsessed with this about, though, just straight up, is that box art. That is just beautiful. Awesome signature Toxic Crusaders colors. Absolutely love it. So this is definitely going on the shelf. So big shout out for this piece. And then we've got the item that I'm probably most stoked with. And I mean, you guys might think the other pieces are cooler than this. We've got this TMNT magazine from spring 1991. And I used to have a bunch of these different TMNT books and magazines that seemed to just be a staple of the news agency. You know, anytime from 1990 through to 1992 at least, I'd be seeing this sort of stuff in the news agency. But there's a couple of aspects of this in particular that make me stoked to have it in the collection. First of all, the cover story of this magazine is the Turtles meet Gorilla. So we've got a character that we didn't get in the vintage toy line, Gorilla in this magazine. So we've got a comic story about the Turtles' interaction with Gorilla. And what's interesting about this is, I remember when Super 7 first released the Ultimates deluxe figure of the character Gorilla, there was some talk about, why aren't we getting Sergeant Bananas? Why are we getting Gorilla? Guys, I'm not a modern guy, I'm not into Super 7, so correct me if any of what I'm saying is wrong, but from what I understand, there were some rights issues with re-releasing Sergeant Bananas as a Super 7 Ultimates figure. So instead they went to Gorilla with a representation very similar to what you see here in this magazine. Now, I'm not quite sure if Gorilla is like the origin of Sergeant Bananas as we know it, or whether these are two different characters, but having heard about that, I thought it was really cool to actually have the magazine in my collection that is the origin for that figure, even though I'm not a modern guy, I'm not a Super 7 guy. Just one of those deep cuts that I thought was pretty cool to see. But the biggest thing that has me excited about this magazine actually has nothing to do with TMNT. This magazine has a fold-out poster of Monster in My Pocket. It's got like a double page that folds out to a poster and a checklist of the original wave of Monster in My Pocket figures, of which is that Wendigo that I got today, that I completed that line. And this is the thing, guys, I've got these kind of vintage magazines in the collection that have pull-out posters, and to this point I've resisted pulling anything out because I want to try and keep these things as pristine as they are when I get them. This magazine's seen better days, so that's cool, but the inside of it where you have this Monster in My Pocket poster is beautiful, and I honestly think I'm going to pull this out and frame it because this is just too cool to have that iconic artwork of that Monster in My Pocket checklist in that Monster Mountain form is just burnt into my brain from when I was a kid. So yeah, I've got to get this. So I'm stoked to have this magazine. I'm knackered. I'm all over the place. But yeah, really happy to have this magazine. Massive shout out to our friend who shall remain nameless. But just know that I want to shout you out. I want to give credit where it's due, but this is just very much appreciated. So big thanks. And guys, that just about does it. In fact, you know what? That does it. We're going to wrap it up there. I hope this video hasn't gone too long, but I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you've made it this far, you're a dead set champion. I hope to hear from you in the comments. As always, you can always hit us up on Instagram at Crusher Collects. Hope to hear from you there. If you're at Collector Con, shoot us a shot on Insta and let me know what you picked up. But yeah, above all, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you back soon for the next one. And until then, cheers.